Welcome, my stars of Orion. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Orionkelly, that autistic guy. I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. I'm so excited for you to meet my next guest, Madeleine Ryan, an Australian writer, director, actor, best known for her debut novel, A Room Called Earth. Madeleine is openly autistic, has written extensively about neurodivergence, identity, and mental health. Yes, she's with us. I can't believe it. Madeleine, welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Congratulations. You have a fantastic, well, you have a successful book from 2020, and you also have a fantastic book out now. And so can I just say congratulations firstly?
Thank you so much.
I decided to be the reverse of the character in the new book and use AI to tell me everything about you, okay? So now we're talking to millions of people here, and I hope, I'm like Oprah's book club. Not really, that's not true. And I hope they go and get these books straight away. I don't care where you are. Madeleine is an awesome Aussie author, and I think it's possible. We did time at the same acting school. It's possible. Mm-hmm. But A Room Called Earth, a fantastic book out in 2020. It's okay. I'm going to read it verbatim from ChatGPT. Are you ready? I'm ready.
Which
a
bit?
deeply introspective novel that follows a single night in the life. Now, is this a straight from your book? In the life of an unnamed autistic woman, as she prepares for, attends, and reflects on a party in Melbourne, Australia. The book is written from a first-person perspective, offering an intimate look into her thoughts, emotions, and sensory experiences. How's that so far for AI?
Pretty good. Pretty solid.
The novel begins with the protagonist getting ready for the party, highlighting her love for rituals, connection to objects, and deep self-awareness. Once she arrives, she navigates social interactions with a mix of curiosity, detachment, and vulnerability. Though she initially feels like an outsider, she engages in philosophical reflections on life, identity, gender, and relationships. A potential romantic connection adds another layer to her internal world as she experiences both exhilaration and uncertainty about intimacy. That is A Room Called Earth by Madeleine Ryan. And how good was that as a selling point? What did AI do?
That was so good. And you did so well delivering that. That was brilliant. Yeah, that was a great summary, I think.
Key themes. I go deep with GPT, by the way. I asked for key themes. The key themes it gave me: neurodivergence and autism, loneliness and connection, identity and self-acceptance, gender and femininity, and perception of reality. They're the key themes. That's what it says.
I think perception of reality is an interesting one, isn't it? That's broad, because I think it's definitely got some mystical kind of sensual vibes, and it's nice to sum that up in that kind of broad term. Yeah, good.
Okay, now let's move. Let's see what it's. This is going to be hard because it's got to be able to take information right from the world, the AI, to do the new book, The Knowing. So let's see what it's come up with. Okay, so Madeleine Ryan's latest novel, The Knowing, again just verbatim from AI, was published on Feb 4, 2025. Is that remotely right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Worldwide?
No, see, it's coming out in the US in September. So we've got a bit of a time. Yeah, it's staggered slightly, but in the UK and Australia and New Zealand and the Commonwealth, it is out now.
So would that include Canada?
Oh, sorry. Excuse my cat, America? Zero.
No, that's okay. Don't excuse.
So it's North America and Canada will be later in the year. So September. So
there's a heap of people watching right now in the UK. I love the cat bombs.
Sorry, this is Zero. She's very. Whenever I'm chatting with someone, meet Zero. Whenever I'm chatting with someone, she insists on being part of it. She loves. I think the performance element is like a thing. Anyway, she's settling now. She's been introduced. She's calmed down. Anyway,
I'm all for it. Yeah, no, I'm all for it. My cats are on my live streams all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the people watching, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and there's stacks from that area, I want you to go and check it out right now. Okay, Madeleine Ryan's The Knowing, and hang in there, my friends in North America, for later in the year. Okay, so this is what AI tells me. Okay, you can let me know in a second. The story unfolds over a single date. Now that's okay. I'm just going to stop myself here. So hang on. So we're sticking to the theme of a single. So it was a single night. Now it's a single day. Is it picked up on the right thing here?
Yeah, it sure
Okay,
has.
the two books. Okay, so the first book's a single night, and the second book is a single day, Valentine's Day. Is that correct? And centres on Camille, a young woman living in rural Victoria, Australia. I live in rural Victoria, Australia.
Me too.
I don't live in. As she commutes to her job at an upscale Melbourne florist, Camille realises she's forgotten her phone, compelling her to navigate the day without digital distractions. This experience prompts deep introspection and highlights her reliance on technology. Throughout the day, Camille contends with various challenges, including period pain and interactions with her demanding boss, Holly. The narrative delves into themes of modern dependence on technology, the quest for genuine human connection, and the complexities of self-awareness in a digitally dominated world. Says AI. How did I go?
Good. You both went well. You and AI did well again. 2 out of 2.
I take little to no credit.
Well, you did the delivery, and the acting school. You're still reaping benefits. I'd like to think I am too, actually. By the way, but yeah. Anyway,
what about this part? While the book, so it's talking about the knowing, does not explicitly label her as autistic, Ryan's writing often reflects a neurodivergent perspective, focusing on themes like sensory overload, social interactions, and the struggle to navigate a world that often feels overwhelming. The novel also explores modern dependence on technology, which resonates with many neurodivergent individuals who rely on digital tools for communication and comfort. So what are your thoughts? How have we sold your 2 books?
Yeah, very well. Very well. And I think, yeah, the neurodiverse aspect, because I'm neurodiverse, I feel like even if it's not explicitly labeled in the books, it's always going to be a part of it. It can't not be because of how I'm wired. And when I'm writing books that are from such a specific point of view in so many ways, it's like, well, that's there, whether I state it directly or not, whether I'm even aware of it or not, that's going to be something that is imbuing the character's psyche. So in the first one, it was more clear to me that she was definitely autistic. In the knowing, she's definitely neurodiverse. The story is very neurodiverse in how it's structured, but it was less clear to me at the end of the day if she specifically was or not. But it's like, I am, so all my worlds are going to be kind of born from that perspective, I think.
I think it's a fascinating discussion to have, the explicit or implicit nature of neurodivergent characters. Does it all have to be so caricature and so titled and headlined and signposted and whatever they want you to do? And I think that's a fascinating discussion to have. And this, I also got to give you suggest questions. We'll get to those in a sec. But for everyone, because I think the digital thing is, I found it funny. What's the new book about? Great, let's use digital AI technology. That's just my sense of humour. But so let's just start at the start for those watching, because I really want everyone, I want the world to know who Madeleine Ryan is and why she's got such great creative works out there. So can we talk about your autism diagnosis, later in life, adult diagnosis? Can we talk about that kind of journey? I'd love you to share that story if you're comfortable.
I certainly am. And yeah, well, it started at acting school, interestingly enough. I became friends with this woman and her daughter, and we would spend every weekend together. I would just spend the whole day at their flat, and we would talk for hours. They had these like salt lamps, and we'd eat like smoked salmon, and it was just this like divine kind of feminine, cushiony, yummy space, and they'd have beautiful oils burning, and we'd just talk for hours. And one day I said to her, this is strange. Like, I haven't often had friendships or connections with people where I can talk for like 8 hours and not be completely wrecked at the end. I mean, or just completely, not even 8 hours. It must have been like 3 or 4. But like, it was like, I would usually feel really taxed by the end of it, and I'd have to try and recover in some way, or I wouldn't even be that conscious about it. I just thought that was how things had to be. And she kind of gently looked at me and said, well, Madeleine, we're autistic and maybe you're autistic too. And I was like, Okay, that had never come into my awareness before. And it still took me like 3 years before it came into my awareness again after she'd said that then in that kind of magical environment and had shared that information with me, but it was like I wasn't ready or I didn't quite even know what it meant. And it took having like a pretty, I can't even remember what it was about, but it was like a communication breakdown with my family or with my parents. And it was about like, it must have been kind of like social expectations or ways I was supposed to interact with people, but I just didn't feel comfortable and I didn't have the language for it. And it all got really tense. And I was like, maybe I'm autistic. Maybe that's why this is just not. And they were like, what? Like, you might be what? And I was like, look, I don't know. It's just one time it was mentioned to me around, in thinking about communication and people and how things happen. And I just, maybe that would help to explore that because I can't do whatever this is and I don't understand what's going on. And they were like, okay, let's investigate that because maybe that would help you. Maybe that would help us. Maybe that would be a useful piece of information if that's the case. So, from that point, I then went down the like official diagnostic and assessment route, I guess, which was laborious and intense and a grind and very different from the magical space that it had first been illuminated for me that could be something that was part of who I was. It then became a real grind of something to explore and figure out. But, I did, and my family went through it, and I went through it, and my partner went through it with us. And at the end of it, it was helpful to know that I was, yes, autistic, and to then delve deeper into understanding and exploring that, and writing about it became a kind of catharsis. Like I wrote about it in a lot of media, and did essays on different things as I was grappling with it, which I've kind of stopped doing now, but certainly for a few years that was like really important for me to unpick and to figure out, okay, like it explained a lot. It joined a lot of dots and has helped me through a lot since. I don't actually think about the fact that I'm autistic much anymore, but it's like, because it's a part of me and I've almost integrated the self-care that led me to and the understanding that's kind of like, it's just now a part of who I am. And that's
Yeah.
the story, I guess.
The experience for late diagnosed people, myself, I guess included, it kind of, you realize quite quickly it's kind of a, do you have enough deficits on your bingo card? Basically what they're trying to do. They're trying to go through this list of deficits and see if you have enough on your bingo card.
Oh my gosh.
And then you can yell out bingo. But from the point of view of, an Aussie woman, how did you find the experience with, in the medical world, the healthcare professionals, and I guess even your peers, because so you're this Aussie woman who presumably most people's, whatever, mate, seriously, give us a spell, give us a spell, going through this process, because I know that a lot of women really struggle just from their emails and their comments in the YouTube community overseas, in different countries, and it's not an easy thing to navigate, not only their healthcare, but also their family and friends buying in on the experience or the process. How did you find that as a woman in Australia?
Well, yeah, I guess there's two parts of that. Navigating the medical establishment side of it was horrendous. And look, I'm not sure there's any positive experience to be had in that environment a lot of the time, even if what comes out of it at the end could be ultimately healing or helpful. It can be kind of devastating. And I mean, the woman that did my assessment, it's also expensive. And she was like, okay, we've got the report. Could you come in again to receive it? And I live in the country. And I was like, you know what? I would really love to receive that information in my space, just in my space with my partner, with the animals around on a nice day, open that maybe email then and just read it. So would it be okay if you just sent that to me and I did that at home? And her assistant responded to me saying, not in 20 years has the doctor heard of this or been requested to do something so outlandish. Everybody has always come in. We would insist that you come in to receive this thing. And I thought the irony of being diagnosed as autistic. So, traveling into the city, having all those interactions, going into that chaotic and also sterile space, and then having to receive, and then traveling all the way back and spending like, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars that would have cost. It was like, I can't believe, like, the hypocrisy, the ironies, it was too much. And I was like, just email it to me, please. And they did. Thank goodness. But I was the first person that this woman in 20 years who supposedly had requested that, according to what they said. So that was like, that exemplifies what that was for me.
And the last, probably. Well, it's not a billable session, mate. You can't.
Yeah.
There's no billable sessions. No, but
No.
I want you to go to the next part, but I just want to say that the reading of the Bible report. I experienced that with our son. It's like, you must come in and we will read you the report. It's like, I actually can read. Did someone tell them I'm illiterate? Because I'm not. You're coming in for the reading of the report. What is this? The Ten Commandments? Give me the goddamn report. It's ridiculous. And they're reading through it. And it's can you make it any more ambiguous? Can you make it any? Can you make it any longer? It's like do you charge by the page? Actually, we do. So that's why it's 400 pages. I know. It isn't a different experience for parents with kids either. It's actually it's actually the reading of the report is kind of a joke. But you're absolutely right. There are people charged to find conditions, medically diagnosed conditions, disabilities, in people. Yet when they can acknowledge that, then they don't actually understand the context. It's like, well, you can still come into a busy waiting room, travel.
I know.
Get out of your
and you're
routine,
the expert on my needs, preferences, and psyche, and you're asking me to do this. Like, what's going on there? And was happy to pay for the report, just didn't need. Well, happy, but did. And then the session as well, like, it just was like, this is getting crazy.
Yeah. No, the report, paying for a report is a wedding tax thing. Like, you've paid money for an assessment. The report is actually the point of paying for an assessment, right? Anyway, so I'm not going to get into that. So what about pushback from family and friends? And did you experience that?
Yeah. So that was the other side of my answer. So there was like two responses and they kind of almost went together. The first was disbelief. People didn't believe it. I think because I'm such a great performer and mimic, and I spent my whole life studying people and films and TV characters and all sorts of things to fit in. And I'm kind of a really interesting mix of very, very deep introvert, I guess, and then although I've actually learned this about myself since, to be honest, I spend so much more time in my own space now than I ever did before. Before I was just like constantly performing, constantly overwhelmed, constantly a mess, constantly burnt out. And people didn't really see or understand that. So they would just see, this performance, this kind of highly strung performance-y. I think a friend once described me as being like a startled ostrich. And I was just constantly in this like, overrun space.
Masking, trying to fit in or be normal, camouflaging, suppressing.
And I would also I drank a lot of coffee to keep up and like do all these things. And it's like, so there was like a kind of disbelief, because also I think I'm this weird mix of like being kind of flamboyant and weird and ridiculous, but also quite intelligent. So people were like, how does this fit? But of course that can be a very autistic way of presenting too. And so then there were people that were also like no, and then like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense. But it does present very differently from the stereotype in a way. It does, but it's like, actually, like you're very logic based, and you do miss certain nuances of things. It can, so that like there were people, and my family in particular, who were kind of like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. Like that helps us join the dots of a lot. And I think created more empathy and understanding for them toward me as well, and understanding that it wasn't personal and it wasn't, or trying to better understand that. So I
think what's fascinating that I kind of got to the bottom of as well is I realized that the people that defined it and call it a spectrum work on the premise that it's actually not. It's linear, high and low. It's so it isn't. It's a spectrum. that you named it that. So don't like. There's no use saying it's a spectrum of infinite. You know, it's like when my Mac dies and closes down. I get that color wheel. It's an infinite color wheel of death, basically, but not death. You know what I'm saying? Where they still think it's just it's a line. There's high,
a scale, yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, this is why people go, you couldn't be. That it's not possible, because we still, we're forced to look at this one type or this caricature of it, when in fact what we realize is autism spectrum is actually that. There's no definition. You don't need to define it. We've defined it. It's a spectrum. There are many presentations, and I think that's what makes it so hard for people of the generations that are being late diagnosed, because I am presuming that the masking and the suppressing and the trying to fit in and the studying of people and the performance has been your whole life, school, everything. So we've gone through life feeling like that, yet no one really could put a finger on on why or what, and potentially we just fell through the cracks. Have you looked back on kind of a life lost? I'm not trying to be down, but like a pre-life and a post-life and the differences of them?
I have, and I think having the knowledge is power. So having the understanding and the awareness imbues everything in ways that are very difficult to measure, in how I treat myself, how I interact with others, my expectations of myself and of others. Like, it kind of filters into everything. But I can also see how it's almost like I wasn't, like my soul or something just wasn't ready until the moment that it came to me. And it was like, when I think about school and I think about like my teenage years, I went to a single sex private girls school, and I was at boarding school for a year. In the middle of that, I went to Lauriston, and you board for year 9. And I just think about, like, it's basically like I almost can't remember any of it. It was just so intense, and being inundated with so much stimulus that I don't know how I got through it, on every level. Because, but then I can see how, I was the kid wanting to play Buffy. I was like the Buffy girl, and I would make friends through like directing Buffy scenes, and we'd all like love Buffy and stuff. But then when we got to that kind of like, oh, there's like social stuff and sex stuff and and then that comes into it, and that all my infrastructure disappeared. I can see that transition now, and just how hard it was. I mean, look, it's hard though, because it's also hard for everyone. Like, it's not an easy time for anybody being a teenager then, No. So it's like, there's also that. But then I know personally from my own experience, if I'd had more self-knowledge at that point to help me create boundaries, to help, with everybody, my parents, my friends, all sorts of things, and better understand myself, that would have been really powerful. But then again, being inundated with all this stuff I didn't understand and going through so much pain and havoc, it must have made me stronger. Like, it just must have. I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. And I can see now that being so inundated with neurotypical ideals, standards, expectations has probably helped me then know how to perform, even though it's all cognitive and I have to switch it on or off or do all the things. It's like, okay, well, I can see how these things sort of work, and I've got quite a good lay of the land now, because I was so inundated and I had no idea what was happening, and I had to deal with that, so it's I have very mixed feelings. What about you?
Well, my mind's spinning now, because I had so many, when you're having a conversation with someone and you have so many different response tangents, and you miss your windows to get it. This is a very autistic experience, and you just want to spew it out. So I have a lot of things to spew out. The first thing I'll say is having an autistic son. I've got 2 boys. One's 11, one's 5, and our 11-year-old's autistic. Now, if people always say, "Oh, autistic kids need more resilience," if there's a kid on the planet with more resilience than an autistic kid, I'd like you to point it out, because these are kids who go to school every day, are pushed and prodded and poked and bullied. That is resilience. They're still alive and going to school. What I have learnt is, look, this doesn't change until you die, but as a child, it's a bigger thing. So take 5 years off your age, and that's your age as an autistic kid with regards to your intelligence, your emotional intelligence, your maturity. So you're a 15-year-old autistic boy or girl, you're 10. Now, so yes, being 15 is hard for 15-year-olds. It's bloody harder if you're actually 10 on the inside. That's what really struggles. See, that's why it's so hard. And for those watching overseas, this is not uncommon in Australia. Year 9 is often, for example, the school that my son goes to. It's like a private school from prep to year 12. Down here on the Bass Coast. And why Orion? Well, he doesn't have to move. He can start at prep, go to year 12, doesn't have to move. Perfect. Year 9, they look like they're from working at Australia Zoo. I mean, I swear to God, they're in khaki. There's a different campus on the same area. They're doing weird stuff. So in Australia, we have this some sort of weird, let's give them life experience, maturity kind of stuff. The school you talked about, I thought back in the day they used to ship you off to like the mountains or something. They literally put them out up near, I don't know, the snowfields or something.
Yeah, I was in the Hauqua Valley. It was called Hauqua.
So they take, I know all about this school. So they take the girls in year 9 and they literally yank them out of their family home and put them in the middle of bloody nowhere. Now, why
I did that.
Well,
I did that.
That's right. That's an Australian thing. We just do this. Maybe it's a worldwide thing. But my 11-year-old autistic son struggles to go to school camp. Now, you did it for a year. I don't care if you got through it and made you stronger. I'm talking about the little girl that had to do it. Like that's because I have the boy. I have the boy.
Yeah, and I'm an only child. Yeah. Like I literally went from family unit of 3, playing Buffy and wanting to play Buffy and do fashion photo shoots because I love fashion magazine, and then got into a house with 13 other girls. And there are like 8 houses in the bush doing bike riding, camping, hiking every day, and all these adult figures, authority figures that I didn't trust and that I didn't like. So it was just layer upon layer of intensity.
It's a fascinating thing, though. I have seen like some research or some studies that talk about how undiagnosed autistic girls and women, their special interests seem to be more socially appropriate. And that's how they can fall through the cracks because they're more interested in, actors or TV shows or art or fashion or music or movies. And as a result of that, even though they have way more obsessive kind of knowledge about it, it comes across neurotypical because you love Buffy, I love Buffy. And you could know everything about it, and that's kind of cool. Where for autistic boys growing up or autistic, young men, they're like, trains, planes, or, the stars or, the things. It's like, well, mate, you're a bit old. Aren't you a bit old for that? So it doesn't come across as socially appropriate, which is really fascinating because that's one of the reasons why, they talk about in research why it can take longer for for girls and women.
Well, but also if I may just interject, one thing that I did discover at boarding school was my love of exercise and how important exercise was as a coping mechanism. But again, as you're saying, exercise is also a very socially acceptable outlet or thing. I was constantly gravitating toward these things almost like another mask, because then my reliance on exercise became like tantamount to my life. And ever since, it's something that's a huge part of every day for me. But amidst the chaos or rising from the ashes was discovering that. But just to add, like in terms of social acceptance and stuff, you're seen as a good person if you exercise. It's not seen as like a sign of like a really deep coping mechanism that if you didn't have, you'd be melting down all the time sort of thing.
Yeah, well, if your life is dependent, if your regulation and quality of life is dependent on your ability to obsessively study planets or universes or galaxies or stars, that's far less appropriate than a fitness fanatic, right? And then this is the thing. This is where it becomes so tricky. But I wanted to mention briefly, you talk about being an only child. So a lot of the late diagnosed autistic people that I've met through my time that I've talked to, interviewed, and just part of the community, we really owe it to having a child who went through the diagnostic process. So they went through the process, they fill out all the forms, and then it starts to dawn on them. And in the criteria, in the DSM-5, there's a capital C which no one ever talks about, which is actually, when your capacities, when your capacity, to deal with stresses and demands is no longer able to simply meet that. So when your capacity is no longer able to meet the stresses and demands of everyday life, your autistic traits are far more present, and that's one of the adult ways. Now, you can say childhood's hard, but it's if you can kind of do your own thing, and then but that's cool. But then it's like marriage, mortgage, kids, job. These are the kind of things that tip it over the edge and lead people to a journey. I guess from your point of view, being an only child would have been quite interesting on the premise that people don't know much about it, but it's just factual scientific knowledge that, as a rule, for the most part, you aren't the first in your family. It came from, someone gave it to you. It's going to be your mum, your dad, your a grandparent on one of the sides. It's just as simple as, it very rarely self-combusts kind of thing. And, hey, guess what? And also too, it's then you start to think, so will I, if I chose to have kids, would I pass it on? And is that something that I'm cool with or not cool with? And again, to say that my 11-year-old autistic son is the same as me is completely wrong. I mean, I may have given him a harder life than I had. Then you start to think about that. Have you had those types of, kind of thoughts or conversations, or because I think parents can take it different ways because they automatically blame themselves, not that they've done anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely given my parents pause for reflection about themselves and their lives. And for me, I can see glimmers of it in both of them in different ways, actually. I mean, my dad feels much more aligned with it than my mum, but there are moments with my mum where I'm like, I wonder. The masking is a fascinating thing, because when I think about how her anxiety functions in the world, I'm like, well, which she has and which she manages, but I'm like, it's interesting. I mean, I have a sort of philosophy that I've developed that seems to be just mine, but in observing myself and observing the autistic people I know and people around me in general, is autistic people are like the heightened sensitivities of everybody else. It's like everybody has similar anxieties or sense of overwhelm or all kinds of things that an autistic person has, but they're able to negate it better, or just keep going, not think about it, not get for it not to be at the forefront of their conscious mind or awareness. But with an autistic person, it's like right there. Whatever the sensitivity is, whatever the thought is, the preference is, the need, it's like it's right there. It's like a lightning bolt. But for others, they can kind of not listen to it or not be led by it, or whether it's a special interest or a sensory experience or whatever, they can kind of just tune it out somehow and remain social and kind of like pleasant. So it's almost like I can always see glimmers in people, but then it's hard to know how deep it goes. And if they don't want to go deeper with it, then it's like, okay, that's fine. That's totally, their prerogative and their right if they don't want to go through the kind of intense line of inquiry, but they're reflecting on it and I wonder. Yeah.
That's the question all autistic people, certainly late diagnosed, often think about. Grandparents may have passed and they think, oh, it makes so much sense, this or that. And they look back at the capacity thing. Like for me, being married and having two boys, well, that was a mistake. I mean, it's a joke. I'm joking. But what I'm saying is I've realised after I've passed it that I have passed my capacity threshold. I've provided myself I've put myself in a life where currently the stresses and demands of everyday life, as you can imagine, are higher than my capacity. My capacity can no longer reach them. Do you ever think about that as you progress in life? And has it even occurred to you that you maybe, without even knowing it, are limiting certain things, in your life to avoid overdoing it? Or is that something that you're just kind of taking kind of one by one? Because presumably, there's many things in life that people want to achieve, and you may have just, without even realizing it, cut some of those things off or away. Is that something you experience?
It's trippy that you're even bringing this up. I think I've been grappling with this a lot lately because there's so much I want to accomplish creatively, and my focus tends to be that. But then I get worried about being overwhelmed if I if and when I become a mother, you know, which I want to do. I want to be a mother. I mean, my partner and I are engaged, so that's great. And we've been together for a long time. So that's been a part of my life I've been able to nurture and integrate. But I'm constantly worried about motherhood overwhelming me completely. It kind of, in addition to all the creative things I want to do, I'm like, how am I going to? And also being a creative person is complete chaos. There's like no stable anything in terms of, you know, money, in terms of the expectations each day change in terms of who I'm communicating with and how, and like where I might be, or like all these things. And it's like, how am I going to do motherhood as well? I talk about hitting a threshold. So I've been reflecting a lot on that, and I get very scared of being overwhelmed, and I worry, I worry that that holds me back. But then I get to this point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to just make choices to just surrender and go with it, and trust that I'm going to be able to manage it. And that's almost like the deepest part of navigating that, is like an implicit trust that even if I feel out of my depth, something, and this is probably where my more spiritual, mystical side comes in, but something is guiding this, and I'm going to trust it even more than my mind, even more than what's immediately in front of me. And I'm going to let that hold the whole experience. So yeah, I think about it a lot,
and that's good. I think that's healthy, and I can tell you from being on the other side of going all through it, you know, that it's one of those things where you just, I would recommend you just don't listen to anyone, because this is the issue. If you're you know, if you're a neurodivergent person and you have a kid, I would have thought for one reason or another, you know, that kid is you know, going to put you through the ringer, because they could, and even a normal baby will put an autistic person through the ringer because of the sensory overload and the physical touch, and, you know, the different things. And some will go, how did you know these are the things that would work for him? And I just knew, or just made sense to me, right? And just so different. The experience is different. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where either way, whatever decision you make is the right decision. But I would just hope that you understand that. But either way, it's going to be hard.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, even if the kid is neurotypical or whatever. Doesn't matter. It's the experience that it puts both of you in. I make a lot of jokes, but, you know, it's absolutely, you know, the best experience of my life, being able to, you know, raise two boys. And my wife is basically, she's the full-time, you know, career woman, and, you know, I've stayed at home and created content, and, you know, hung out with the boys until you know, they could go to daycare or kinder and school and those kind of things. And, you know, they were great experiences, and it kind of, you learn a lot. But I don't think I would have been cut out or capable as an, you know, kind of an autistic person to be a dad in my 20s or even kind of early 30s. I think there was, because you take that 5 years off. Now, you know, being an older dad, I think it's helped me in a way where, because, you know, I can be a very explosive autistic person, that autistic rage, the meltdowns and stuff. So I think that really helped. Being a slightly older dad really helped, because you've kind of worked, as you say, you've worked out your way of living. Like, you've kind of worked out your self-care and what works for you. And I think that's really important. And so it's kind of like, it's a weird payoff, right? Like, you get these neurotypical people that have kids, that they squeeze them out to 3 kids in 3 years or something in their 20s, and they're 40 and their kids have moved out. It's like, my kids will move out when I'm 70 or something. It's like, and maybe they won't ever move out.
I know.
You know, so it's just such a different experience. But, you know, I think it's one of those things where it's good to know that you like. I understand it's all about empowerment, but you do have, as a autistic woman, you do have a capacity threshold. Like, you have a medically diagnosed neurodevelopmental condition. You have a capacity threshold, and it will be reached at some point. And it's about, you know, it's just, if you understand that, you know, you've got it. Your parents probably gave you all the clues you need by just.
And I think you also get used to, by having me, but also I think I get better, and I'm sure you'd be similar, at like feeling when I'm reaching, like even just moment by moment, when I'm reaching that, or when I can feel it brewing that I'm going to have a problem. And you get better at knowing that. And I even had a friend say to me not that long ago, when I was talking about this and about, anxiety about being overwhelmed and motherhood and taking it all on in addition to what I'm already doing. And he was like, has there ever been a point though where you were completely overwhelmed and everything kind of fell apart? And I was like, well, there have been hard times. He was like, yeah, that's not what I like. But has it ever happened that you have been so beside yourself that you couldn't, like, you act like life came apart? And I was like, no. And he was like, that's something to remember when you're stressing about it. Because, like, I'd have somehow navigated everything. Even when I've been at my lowest, I've gotten through it. I'm here to tell the tale. Something got me through. So it's like being aware of that in addition to the self-care, getting used to the signs. It's like, maybe we're doing all right. I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I want to like throw some GPT questions at you to get some really, like random brief answers back in a second, just for a bit of fun. But can I just say, I say this a lot. Although, my two boys, they're going to put me into an early grave, I swear to God. You can't take it back apparently either, which is the weird thing. But here's the thing, right? I honestly believe this when I say this to you. My firstborn, autistic son, he saved my life. I would be dead. I was done. I had enough of the stuff because he led me to a diagnosis. Yeah. Life was, treating me as an undiagnosed autistic person as I was I was bad, I was broken, I was weird, I was whatever you want to think that is what people don't want. That's who I was. That's who I thought I was and how I was seen. And as a result, I got to the point where I didn't even think I was suicidal. I thought I was tired. I'm just tired of life. Like I felt like an 80-year-old man, still do, right? I'm like, life has been more tiring. And having someone who showed me the light, really, and just a child, that really saved my life. So, really having an autistic kid saved my life. And now he's gone on to ruin it. But that's a different story for a different time. But, this is true. I mean, I can't even tell you. I was absolutely at that point where I'm just sick of feeling like I'm always the bad, broken one.
Yeah. Oh, God. The amount, I feel that. I so deeply get that. And I've been in those harrowing moments of like, I'm just a burden to everyone and everything. And I don't know what the point is in being here if that's the case. Like, what do I even have to give if I'm just everywhere, in every direction I look, in every relationship I seem to not fit and to be an inconvenience as distinct from helping people or making them happy, let alone myself. Like, what am I doing here? Those are really harrowing experiences. Yeah. And like, I think in lots of ways, the relationship I'm in helped me navigate that because we just started sort of seeing each other when I was at my worst point with it, which is like inexplicable. I don't quite know how I got there at that moment, but there was this period of time that was so devastating. But then building a relationship through that, I think somehow was like a miracle. So I can see how the things appear, that you can hold on to, I guess, on some level if you want to. There are people that, but he appeared right when I needed him, kind of. And it sounds like your son
to me.
did something similar, yeah.
I mean, obviously, my wife and my son, they definitely brought it together for me, which is absolutely, 100% correct. I think, having that experience through life is one of the reasons why I don't really understand or feel or acknowledge success. Like it doesn't mean anything to me that if I have lots of views or subscribers, I'm super, it's meaningful to me that they've connected with me. But the numbers, like the success on the numbers, there's something about it I don't, because, well, you've never accepted me before, why should I accept the numbers now, kind of thing. It's a really hard thing to grapple with. But yeah, I'm really grateful for being so kind of open and honest with those kind of thoughts, because I think it is really important people understand. Doesn't matter where you are or who you are or what you're up to. There's always going to be challenges, and that's one of those things you've just got to work out how to mitigate or do things that are right for you. Okay, so GPT has some just killer questions here. I got a couple of these. You don't have to answer them long. How has your own autism diagnosis shaped your storytelling style and the characters you create?
It's hard for me to measure that or to quantify that. I think they're completely probably defined by it because I am. So I guess those things are totally integrated.
This is about A Room Called Earth. It wants to know, this is funny how it wants to know, did you expect it to resonate so deeply with neurodivergent readers, and what kind of feedback did you receive from the autistic community? Wow.
I didn't necessarily expect it to, I guess, because of, in a way, what you've just been talking about feeling isolated and almost wary when people are like, wow, we're so connected because, oh, I see myself so much in what you're doing. It's like, cool, okay, great, I'm onto something. But like, I haven't ever experienced that before. So like, what? I didn't expect it because I was really just writing my own, like from a perspective and through a lens that I was creating through my own thoughts, feelings, sensitivities, whatever I was grappling with. I imbue the worlds and characters with that. So it's like, but through that, I did learn through the feedback I got, but also just through writing it, that there is something universal about the individual. And when you go into your stuff and you turn it into something beautiful, there is like a kind of universal magic you tap into that people can then see themselves in and are hopefully also liberated by when you do that. So, yeah, again, all connected.
A Room Called Earth, that's your debut novel, and your latest book, The Knowing, it wants, because it explores a world without digital distractions. Now, this is a question crafted by AI on a world without digital distractions. How do you think neurodivergent people might experience a phone-free day differently than neurotypicals? This is from AI, this question.
I guess it all depends on your coping mechanisms, doesn't it? Because I think I've known autistic people who like everything is on social media. So I can't even imagine. I mean, in the book, she's got social media and she's very affected by it, but it's more having something to distract her from the present moment that she like that sense of escape she's more affected by. So in terms of, I mean, neurotypical people I know though are just as attached to. I think it's kind of almost like this. Everybody's having a bit of a problem with the phone or with a lack of phone in some form or other. It's the crux of or crutch to almost everything we do, whether it's just a practical thing or a social thing. The phone is there. It's like not even a phone. It's like a magic wand. It's a remote control to life. It's like all these different things. So it affects everyone, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just depends on your coping mechanism as an autistic person though, and how much. Yeah, but it's not comfortable for anyone to not have a phone, I don't think.
Yeah. AI wants to know, do you find writing allows you to unmask in a way that real life doesn't?
Yes.
What do you think mainstream storytelling is still getting wrong with regards to neurodivergent characters?
Probably pigeonholing them, needing to label them even, but having just very narrow definitions of how they exist and what they have to offer. I mean, I think there have been many authors through the ages that were definitely neurodiverse, but were just great because they were great. So it's almost like on the one hand, do they need to be labeled? On the other, no. Just celebrating people in all the ways they present, I think, is the ultimate key.
That's good. I like that. Well, it's very similar to, I guess, the vibe of the second book. Many autistic people rely on routines to function well, right? But you're a writer. You're a creative person. Do you have specific writing rituals or habits that help you stay creative, or is your process fluid?
There's like fluidity within the routine. There are like certain things that are like non-negotiables that I do every day, but then when I write and how I write around them is more fluid. But it's like most days this is when I'm like at home for an extended period of time and I'm not expected to be in the world kind of having meetings, communicating, creating, because that's like a different sort of space. But even then I'm always exercising, eating what I know works for my body, trying to get as much sleep as I can, but being kind to myself if I'm like overstimulated at night, which sometimes I can get. I do like tarot and things like that. I find that helps me navigate things, and the images are really helpful. I like to talk things through with my partner. And then there's writing, kind of like, it's like there's all these things, and then there's writing, and then there's communicating, but all those are like the foundation of how I function.
You know, on chat shows and stuff, I think it's got this directly from this. You almost have to do a stupid voice to read. This is the last one. You've given us 2 thought-provoking books that explore neurodivergence, introspection, and human connection. Can you give us any hints about what you're working on next? That's a chat show question right there.
I love it. Well, I can give you more than hints. I've actually written my 3rd book, and it'll be coming out next year. Because The Knowing took me 4 years to write. It was a journey, to say the least. But then my 3rd book took a month.
What? That's hyper-focus, my friends.
That was hyper-focus. And no amphetamines, no crazy shit.
No, autism.
Can I swear? No crazy shit. I had just lots of dark chocolate. There's this place in town that does these dark chocolate cookies, and they basically got me through. And then exercising and thinking, and it was just like, it just came out in a month. But yeah, The Knowing took 4 years. A Room Called Earth took about 2. The 3rd's coming next year, and it's and it's about the final year of high school of this character. Okay. So it deals with a bit more, like, it's kind of adult in tone and perspective, but she's pretty fabulous. And she's navigating private girls, she's navigating life at Lauriston, basically, in her final year, which was a very seminal moment for me in my development and individuating. Even though I didn't know I was autistic, that final year, I started to figure out what worked for me in lots of ways that I then, after that point, negated and talked myself out of, and did all these things that I then had to come back to. But there was this moment where I realized what worked for me, and it was very cataclysmic socially. It was all these things, and this is a fiction, but it is very based on a lot that I went through in that final year, and that kind of coming of age, like figuring out who you are, how to relate to sex, how to relate to your body, the other girls, all the things. It's all tied in there, but it came out like a bullet train.
That's brilliant. But that is classic neurodivergence. 4 years, 1 month. It's classic.
Yeah.
Well, I often use AI to translate my autistic self into like a neurotypical-ish kind of language. So what did you think of those questions? The AI things?
I sort of just turned them into wherever I wanted them to go. So like, I'll work with anything. If that's something that can tell you what I can do with given, what is it? When given lemons, make lemonade. But I think they were good questions. They were quite, targeted and interesting.
So there you go. Take that, digital against digital. No, I'm with you. I agree. I think it's actually really helpful for a lot of autistic people. Certainly, those ones in the young adulthood to kind of, here's an email, and it'll tell you this is probably a more warm, professional way to do the email. Just things to kind of help you along the way. So I find that whole thing fascinating. All right, this has been really good. I hope you've had fun.
Yeah, very much. You're very fun to talk to, and I've even had revelations while talking to you, which is just icing on the cake.
I'm stoked to hear that. That's what I'm all about. So I've really enjoyed catching up, and hopefully now. The world watching will go and check out your incredible books. I'm sorry to North America. You'll have to wait until September for The Knowing, but there's the first novel you can digest right now. So go and do it, please. Hey, Madeleine, thank you so much for the chat. It was awesome.
No, thank you. It was fun, Orion.
Aussie, autistic woman and superstar, Madeleine Ryan. And if you'd like to hear more stories of everyday autistic people from right across the planet, check out my collaborations playlist right now.